Hello guys, my good people of Biafra. I welcome you to Oronto TV news channels, where we publish news on politics, entertainment and celebrity news. Before you watch any of our videos in this channel, please, we request that you subscribe to our channel to stay updated with the latest news and information anytime we publish a new video. I want to take us to an episode that was written by one Hausa Fulani man, where he was comparing Biafra and Singapore. Please, I want us to pay attention because this man made a lot of comments concerning IPOB and also Biafra, which is not proper, and definitely a lot of criticisms, which was actually a lot of people criticized this article because the man was writing off point. Secondly, he made a lot of mistakes by trying to compare the decision that was taken between Malaysia and Singapore during their own civil war. Actually, a lot of agreement that was reached then between Singapore and Malaysia were put into consideration. But in our own time, the agreement between Biafra and Nigeria was not taken into cognizance and was not put into consideration. So because of that, a lot of people faulted this article written by this Hausa Fulani man. Let me take us on this article. Comparing Singapore as a lesson for Biafra. There are some news or article which one can read and become twitchy or separated to say something about the news or articles. For almost a month ago now, I read this article, but I am still twitchy to say something about the article. The article I am referring to is the one found on allafrican.com, published by the Daily Trust Abuja, and was written by Ibraheem Dooba with the title Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew, a lesson for Biafra. Don't get me wrong, Singapore is a nice country to be compared with Biafra. If one day Biafra becomes like Singapore, I will be very glad indeed. However, according to the article in question, Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew made a tearful broadcast to inform his people that the merger deal between Singapore and Malaysia had collapsed due to certain misunderstanding. First and foremost, I will be in tears or in a bad mood should that happen to be Singapore's President Lee Kuan Yew, because Singapore and Malaysia have a lot in common with each other. There is not that much of dissimilarity between people from Singapore and Malaysia. Singapore and Malaysia are related in every way by boundary, religion, geography, economics, and in ties of kinship. Thus, it is not wise to compare Singapore and Malaysia with the case of Biafra and Nigeria. That is to say, you cannot compare Hausa Fulani and Yoruba with Igbo, Ijaw, or other ethnic group. Despite the fact that Yoruba people are totally different from Hausa Fulani, even though that they are always making out that they are with them or that they are always in support of them, traditionally or culturally, most parts of Nigeria are totally different in nature. Following the article, the author noted that one of the chief reasons for Lee, Singapore's president, to champion the call to merge and support Tunku Abdul Rahman, the then Malaysian Prime Minister, was to help end the British colonial rule, who Lee remembered couldn't help the Singaporeans during the Japanese occupation of the city-state from 1942 to 1945. Did you hear it? To end British colonial rule. And time again, British colonial rule appeared to have been creating problems for every country that the British ruled. Once a country had been under British colonial rule, there will be problems, and the problem will remain in the country even after their independence, unless if the problems are found and removed. Even sometimes, not until all sides of every British colonial rule is abolished within the country/countries before the country/countries can get ripe of themselves. It is difficult trying to hammer this onto Hausa Fulani or Yoruba man's head that there are problems around the world with British colonial rule, and until the site of British colonial rule has been gotten rid of before the country or countries have known peace. Nigeria was created under British colonial rule, and until Nigeria is dismantled before a known peace is obtained. Coinciding to the article, in September 1963, Singapore became part of Malaysia, but 2 years later, a separation became necessary due to 1. Race riots, in which Malaysians and Chinese of Singapore killed themselves after a Chinese allegedly set up a Malay rally with a bottle. And 2. What Malaysian Prime Minister Tunku Abdurrahman called a state government that showed no measure of loyalty to its central government. Now you heard it. For the parting of the two countries, it took one incident for them to dissolve the union. Yet the author is comparing Nigeria and Biafra. Thousands and 1,000 incidents have occurred between Nigeria and Biafra, and still the reluctance in separation. Going back to the article again, one of the separation, Eddie Strongly said, "Every time we look back on this moment, when we signed this agreement which served Singapore from Malaysia, it will be a moment of anguish. For me, it is a moment of anguish because all my life, you see, the whole of my adult life, I have believed in merger and the unity of these two territories. You know, it's a people connected by geography, economics, and ties of kingship. Now, can you say the same for Nigeria and Biafra, yet the author chose to be comparing the two? In the article, this one got me going because this is the belief of all Hausa Fulani people that Biafra is landlocked and no easily identifiable natural resources. And yet, when we call them Nama people or Nama brain, they get offended. It is only people with Nama brain will say that Biafra is landlocked and no easily identifiable resources. Biafra is the former eastern region of Nigeria, and not during and after the Civil War, when they bribed most of their regions to ask them to say they are not Biafran, just to make Biafra, as the author put it, landlocked or no easily identifiable resources. To read the paragraph in whole, the author wrote, "The foregoing tells a story about early days of Singapore to make the point that Singapore and Biafra of today may share some things in common, one of which is the fact that they both have no easily identifiable natural resources. For example, to this day, Singapore imports its drinking water from Malaysia, yet many would argue that one major difference is that while Singapore is an island which berths many ships, Biafra is landlocked. For a start, Biafra has many identifiable natural resources outside of oil and gas, because that's one thing people with Nama brain know as a natural resources. I will give you two examples and leave you to just figure the two out. 1. Malaysia today exports their products as their number one product, which we have in abundance in Biafra land today. 2. Britain used to make a lot of money with this product until they stopped it or stopped sourcing it, which is also in abundance in Biafra land today. I have only given you two examples to figure out apart from oil and gas. And manufacturing found manufacturing found in Biafra land today. Writing article like this, it looks as if Hausa Fulani people are feeding Biafra people, or without them, Biafra wouldn't survive. Yet they are unwilling to let Biafra go their own way, because they know very well that Biafra is the one feeding them. Writing prejudicial articles like this one is the reason why Nigerians get bad reputations, because Hausa Fulani and Yoruba writers keep rather on trying to disgrace Biafra or Igbo people by writing nonsense and untrue facts, not knowing that they are disgracing themselves, because people they are telling the story know more about what they are telling them about than themselves, which renders their stories useless. Majority of people reading the article did geography, and they know that northern Nigeria is landlocked and has no easily identifiable resources. When you ask British colonial masters why did they did what they did in Nigeria, they will simply tell you that there is nothing in the north, that they want the south to feed the north. So north is not doing Biafra a favor by keeping Biafra in Nigeria. Rather, they are doing themselves the favor. Writing article like this one is making a fool of oneself, because no reader from Britain, America, or any nationality will buy the story that Biafra is landlocked or has no easily identifiable natural resources. The writer still made a mug of himself again by writing the following. However, the most important difference is that in Singapore's experience with nationhood, merger with Malaysia, separation, self-governance, independence, and its march into developed nation status yields a point that differs with that of Biafra. In all the struggle, Singapore was led by an incredibly patriotic statesman who hungered for freedom in all its shield for his people. Lee once said that if, while being lowered into the grave, something went wrong with Singapore, he would wake up. What I take away from the renewed struggle for Biafra is that the movement still lacks a leader. As a result, I conclude that for Biafra to succeed and leapfrog Nigeria in development, Singapore and Malaysia, the movement needs to find it a selfless leader. The writer made out that Biafra is already a country and Nnamdi Kanu has been elected the president of Biafra. Nnamdi Kanu is neither the leader nor the president of Biafra, but Nnamdi Kanu is the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. IPOB is a group set up by some indigenous people of Biafra to struggle peacefully in order to help create Biafra. It does not mean that they own the right of Biafra. There are a lot of Biafrans who are not the member of IPOB. It doesn't mean that when Biafra is created, those people who are not members of IPOB would not vote or take part in anything concerning Biafra. For example, after the struggle, IPOB may decide to change as a political party and may have Nnamdi Kanu selected as their nominated presidential candidate and then be voted for as the president. As I said above, that IPOB is a group set up for peaceful struggle for the creation of Biafra. Some people may not be members of IPOB because they do not believe in peaceful struggle. So tomorrow you might not be surprised to see another group that pop up with huge members just to challenge Biafra and his military. So far, Buhari loves using military forces. Reading the article, I started to think, who will buy the story anyway? Perhaps the only people that will buy this writer's story will be people like himself, Hausa Fulani people. The writer went on to say, Biafra and Singapore both experienced war. In Singapore's case, a Japanese occupation in which Lee was once slapped for refusing to bow to a Japanese soldier and once escaped the firing squad. The driver of Biafra, notably Nnamdi Kanu, do not appear to have that experience. Lee is highly educated, and his two brothers graduated from Cambridge. He, as a lawyer who graduated with first class and a perfect score in Part 2 law. Nnamdi Kanu, the face of the new Biafra movement, on the other hand, is, if he's educated at all, does not project that image. Now, the writer starts confusing himself by using Nnamdi Kanu in place of Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. He wrote, Lee is highly educated. He and his two brothers graduated from Cambridge. Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu graduated from Oxford. In the UK, Oxford is more prestigious than Cambridge. The writer talked about signing agreement that Nnamdi Kanu didn't sign any agreement with the neighboring countries. Well, didn't Ikemba Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu sign agreement with Nigeria? Where did it get him? Has the writer not heard of Aburi Accord or Aburi Agreement, where the head of state then, General Yakubu Gowon, signed an agreement in Ghana with Odumegwu Ojukwu, and as soon as Yakubu Gowon got back to Nigeria, he cancelled the agreement. Can anybody sign any binding agreement with Hausa Fulani people? No. They, Hausa Fulani, are never to be trusted. They are ready to break the agreement at any moment. They will lie to you to make you trust them, and later on stab you at the back. We keep on making the mistakes of trusting them, and they pull the fast one on us. Look at President Buhari today. He's a Fulani man. Before the election, he agreed on everything, and once he's elected president, is he obeying anything now, including the country's constitution? Talk of obeying national laws, human rights laws, international laws, and so on. Even Buhari sworn that he will never introduce Sharia law. Now, what's he doing? Gradually, he is introducing Sharia law. Therefore, Hausa Fulani people are the most irresponsible human beings. Part of their nature, it runs in their blood. They are good in carrying daggers and machine guns about, looking for whom to kill. You cannot sign any binding agreement with them. Now, as a Hausa Fulani man, he said, I don't see why Biafra would want to leave Nigeria. Igbos are enterprising and therefore need the large market Nigeria offers. I also see no reason why Nigeria should keep Biafra. They account for a large chunk of our negative image abroad. I, however, think a separation would bring benefit to both countries. According to the writer, Igbos are enterprising and therefore need the large markets Nigeria offers. If that is so, tell me which part of Nigeria is Igbo free to trade? Where in the north, perhaps transacting in the Boko Haram areas, even transacting in the southwest area is a bit of struggle. Notably, Lagos is now more ethnical. So tell me, which area would Igbo man be free to trade in Nigeria without some sort of obstacle? According to the writer, Biafra accounts for a large chunk of our negative image abroad. The truth is bitter, but Nigerians' negative image is caused by Hausa Fulani presidents, ministers, and governors carrying stolen monies up and down, trying to hide them in different banks around the world. Tell me who in this world who haven't heard of Nigerian Sani Abacha loot. His stolen billions are still being recovered all over the world. What of Umaru Diku's stolen millions? The same goes for Ibrahim Babangida's loot. Abubakar, Danjuma, Buhari, even Saraki, and so on. And very soon, we will begin to hear about Buhari's own looting again. Below is the article. Nigeria, Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew, a lesson for Nigeria, a lesson for Biafra. A teary-eyed Lee Kuan Yew made a broadcast in which he told his people that the merger between Singapore and Malaysia had collapsed. This was in early August of 1965. Early in the day, Lee Kuan Yew signed an agreement detailing how the two nations would coexist peacefully. The collapse of negotiation was a personal blow to Prime Minister Lee, and after the speech, during which he fought back tears, he disappeared from the public for 6 weeks. This dramatic event happened after Lee himself led Singapore to form a union with Malaysia. In doing so, he used the referendum of 1962 to convince Singaporeans of the popularity of his proposal to join Malaysia. Lee rigged the referendum to support his call, for while 70% of voters supported joining Malaysia, the other votes cast were left blank because Lee didn't allow an option for no. Malaysia was then called Malaya. Its Prime Minister, Abdurrahman, in 1961 proposed a federation, Malaysia, which will include Malaysia, Singapore, and Bashab and Sarawak in the Boron region. One of the chief reasons for Lee to champion this call and support Abdurrahman was to help end the British colonial rule, who Lee remembered couldn't help the Singaporeans during the Japanese occupation of the city-state from 1942 to 1945. In September 1963, Singapore became part of Malaysia, but 2 years later, a separation became necessary due to one race riot in which Malaysia and Chinese of Singapore killed themselves after a Chinese allegedly set up a Malay rally with a bottle. And two, what Malaysian Prime Minister Abdurrahman called a state government that showed no measure of loyalty to its central government. Of the separation, a distracted Lee said, "Every time we look back on this moment, we will sign this agreement which saved Singapore from Malaysia, who saved Singapore from Malaysia. It will be a moment of anguish for me. It is a moment of anguish because all my life, you see, the whole of my adult life, I have believed in merger and the unity of these two territories. You know, it's a people connected by geography, economics, and ties of kinship." Lee soon came out of his exclusion to lead Singapore from 1959 to 1990, from a country that had nothing to, that had everything. Now Singapore leads Asia in Human Development Index and is 9th in the world. The foregoing tells a story about early days of Singapore to make the point that Singapore and Biafra of today may share some things in common, one of which is the fact that they both have no easily identifiable natural resources. For example, to this day, Singapore imports its drinking water from Malaysia, yet many would argue that one major difference is that while Singapore is an island which bets many ships, Biafra is landlocked. However, the most important difference is that in Singapore's experience with nationhood, merger with Malaysia, separation, self-governance, independence, and its march into developed nation status, yields a point that differs with that of Biafra. In all the struggle, Singapore was led by an incredible patriotic statesman who hungered for freedom in all its shields for his people. Lee once said that if, while being lowered into the grave, something went wrong with Singapore, he would wake up. What I take away from the renewed struggle for Biafra is that the movement still lacks a leader. As a result, I conclude that for Biafra to succeed and leapfrog Nigeria in development, like Singapore and Malaysia, the movement needs to find itself a selfless leader. Biafra and Singapore both experienced war. In Singapore's case, a Japanese occupation in which Lee was once slapped for refusing to bow to a Japanese soldier and once escaped the firing squad. The drivers of Biafra, notably Nnamdi Kanu, do not appear to have that experience. Lee is highly educated and his two brothers graduated from Cambridge. He, as a lawyer who graduated with first class and a perfect score in Part 2 law, Nnamdi Kanu, the face of the new Biafra movement, on the other hand, if he's educated at all, does not project that image. While Lee was wise enough to realize that his nation needed Malaysia and even sign agreement on trade and defense, Nnamdi Kanu wants to burn down everything in Nigeria, and he attracts the same fellowship whose dust up are leading with ultimatums instead of moving and convincing speeches. Do this or we burn down the embassy. I don't see why Biafra would want to leave Nigeria. Igbos are enterprising and therefore need the large market Nigeria offers. I also see no reason why Nigeria should keep Biafra. They account for a large chunk of our negative image abroad. I however think a separation will bring benefit to both countries. As illogical as that may sound, many variables would come into play that will engender such advantage. But the Biafra movement would do well to replace its rhetorics of fear with plans and negotiation of how the future nation will survive, collaborate and compete with its neighbors. Rallying behind a strong leader is a good way to start. Israelites had Moses, Singaporeans had Lee, and even the first Biafrans had Ojukwu. Guys, this is the news, and also this article was written by Mohammed Buddha, and also where he criticized a lot about the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, comparing him with Lee of Singapore. Also in this article, he was directly positioned and reminded that comparing Singapore and Biafra, there is a very big disparity and there is a very big gap. The people of Singapore and Malaysia understood the agreement they had with each other during the war, and they make sure and they ensure that that agreement was kept. But in the case of Biafra and Nigeria, the reverse was the case. The head of state then, General Yakubu Gowon, flouted that agreement, and it resulted to a lot of setbacks that Biafrans are having today. So please, before you leave, you can kindly drop your comment below. Let me know your mind concerning this issue, and do not forget to also subscribe and share our videos to WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter platforms. And I thank you for staying tuned and tuning into Oronto TV News. May God bless you all here, my good people of Biafra. Thank you so much.